Hello, my name is Abby Davis with the Easton Center for Career Readiness, and thank you for joining us for our second edition of Business Brews. We're so excited that you're all with us today. I'm going to introduce our speakers that we have with us. First, we have Jennifer Grigsby. She's an Oklahoma State and Spears alum of our accounting program. Jennifer was recently appointed as the Secretary of Economic Administration for the Governor's Cabinet in the state of Oklahoma. And before that, she served as an executive vice president and CFO in the energy industry and has 25 years of experience in the industry. Jennifer stays very active here at OSU and her alma mater as a founding member for Women for OSU. She's a former board chair for the OSU Alumni Association, a current board member for the Easton Center for Career Readiness. Thank you, Jennifer. And was inducted into the OSU Hall of Fame in 2019. Jennifer and her husband are also avid OSU sports fans, and so you will likely see her at just about any sporting event. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us.
I'm happy to be here, Abby. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Robin Scott, and Robin Scott is also an Oklahoma State alum, and he came to OSU from his hometown of Edinburgh, Scotland, on a tennis scholarship. He has a successful track record both on and off the court as an athlete and business professional. Robin has served as an athletic director and has almost 30 years of experience working for private and exclusive residence clubs. Overseeing all athletic operations, Robin ensures that all of his guests at his resorts receive the best athletic experience possible. Robin stays engaged with his alma mater as a founding member of the Easton Center Advisory Board and also serves as a mentor and resource to our students. As an executive in the hospitality industry, Robin's also very excited, as we all are, that the School of Hospitality and Tourism Management is now part of the Spears family. Robin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Abby. My pleasure.
Well, that was a really high-level introduction, and you all have just a wonderful background and experience. So I'd like for you to have an opportunity to cover anything that I missed. And Jennifer, I'll start with you. Will you just give our viewers today a little bit more background about your professional experience?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much, Abby. As Abby said, I've spent most of my career in the energy industry. So the topic of resilience and that industry, just sort of go hand in hand. I wonder why she called and asked if I would talk about this topic. So yes, I've spent 25 years in the industry, and then, just recently have moved into state government again, where Abby said I'm on the governor's cabinet here in Oklahoma. So I loved my time in energy. I have great relationships from that time. I wouldn't trade my career there for anything, but it's definitely had its ups and downs.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Robin, I'll ask you to do the same. You've recently had a big move, and so will you just tell us a little bit about your background and the current move that you're going through?
Certainly. Right out of college at Oklahoma State, I went to work at a country club in Oklahoma, started off my career in the private club industry. And after a few years doing that, I joined up with Four Seasons, one of the leading companies in the resort and hotel business. And I spent 28 years with Four Seasons. Had a wonderful career there, a wonderful company, learned so much being in that structured corporate environment. But in the end, COVID hit, and that affected the entire hotel industry, which then gave me an opportunity to seek a new opportunity. And I've actually landed back in the private club industry. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. I moved here last week, and I'm already working on the suntan, as you can see. But it's been a wonderful journey, and hopefully what we can share with you today gives you some insight into helping you on your path and your own journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you both so much for being here. So Jennifer and Robin both serve on our Easton Center Advisory Board, and a lot of that is tied to their passion to helping our students and preparing you to have a successful career. And we can talk about energy and hospitality, but really any industry, or any career can be impacted. And it isn't necessarily because of downturns or losing a job. There's lots of ways that we need to be resilient throughout our career. And so that's what we're talking about today is resiliency. I feel like the whole world has had a lesson in resiliency, over the past year. And now, as we see, vaccines are more available, we're starting to see businesses open back up more. We're seeing hopefully more opportunities, but there's still been an opportunity to demonstrate that resiliency. So I want to start off just by defining resiliency, right? Because that's a big word. We define it as rebounding from setbacks and adversity when facing difficult situations. So my first question for you, and before I ask this, I want to remind everyone that's viewing, you can submit questions. So you'll see a number at the bottom of the screen throughout this presentation. Please send us your questions. We'd love to ask them to our speakers today. So first question, I'm going to start off with you, Jennifer, if you don't mind. What types of situations do you see arise in people's career where they need to practice that resiliency?
Yeah, Abby, I think there are so many types of situations where resiliency comes into play. And I think you're right. I think we automatically think of job loss. But I think there are so many other situations. I think about in my career, there were times when our company was growing so fast that things were changing around us, and we were raising capital for new projects, and we were working a lot of hours, and just to keep up with the growth, you had to be resilient. You had to be resilient to change. Things were changing very quickly. And so I think, as you defined it, the ability to respond in a situation like that challenges you can come in many forms. I think it also can come, and the pandemic has shown that it can come in a time when maybe your industry is in a downturn, or, maybe your company is not growing, but shrinking. And I saw that as well. The same company that I worked for and that Abby worked for as well, we worked together. There were boom times, and there were times when we were pulling back and shifting our focus. And resiliency, I think, applies there as well. And I guess, so maybe, it gets back to how do you respond to change? And, can you respond positively, constructively, as I like to say, or, destructively? And I think the ability to respond positively, constructively is really key and can be applied to lots of situations.
Okay, great. I love that, the constructive versus destructive. I don't think I've ever heard that before, but I think it absolutely applies here. That's wonderful. So Robin, same question to you. What types of situations do you see where we have an opportunity to practice resiliency in our careers?
I think inevitably in your career, you're going to have a new boss at some point. And that usually will come with challenges. If you're lucky enough to be blessed with a wonderful boss right off the bat, that's great. But actually, that's not really going to teach you a whole lot of resiliency. That's just going to give you a great experience. So I would say change of boss, where you have to learn a new personality, you have to learn new expectations. That's something that is very real out there in the work world. New ownership, perhaps. Your company may be bought, and all of a sudden you have a different owner with a different outlook, different financial expectations, and you have to shift, change. As Jennifer said, you have to be willing to change. And the one thing I'd say to everyone is that usually change comes just when you're getting comfortable. So whenever you're comfortable in your career, expect change to happen and expect it to happen, and be ready to be resilient when it happens. So prepare in advance for change happening, because it's coming. You don't know when, but you know for sure it's coming.
Yeah, that's great. And your comment just around a new boss, or even, resiliency through having a performance review, right? There's times.
Or you may have team members that you struggle with, you butt heads with, you can't find ways to make it work. Well, are you going to just pout and quit, or you show resiliency and you show the willingness to get to a positive solution and do the right thing, be the person to do the right thing in those situations. I always feel like that's one of the hallmarks of resiliency, is to be the one that leads the team or leads yourself out of a challenging situation.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and Robin, I'll start with you for this question. Do you mind sharing a time with us when you had to be resilient during your own career?
The last 12 months. Yeah, I mean, I was working at a resort, Four Seasons Resort Dallas. I'd had the best 5 years of my career, performance-wise. I had built such a great team. Financially, was in the best phase of my career, and all of a sudden, COVID hit. So a 431 room hotel went from successful business to zero overnight, and the overall business went from $100 million annually to probably 30 to 35 million. So all of a sudden, you knew cuts were coming. You knew that furloughs were happening. And the one thing that I would say to everyone, and this is the resiliency part, is you have to take the human element out of it. You can't feel sorry for yourself, because in the end, while I might have a good relationship with my boss and his boss or her boss, ultimately the decisions are being made at a level where they have no idea who you are, and you become a entry on a spreadsheet. So ultimately you realize that it's not about you, it's about a business reality. So the resiliency factor is separating yourself from, this is about me and oh woe is me, and realizing that you it's out of your control. So what can you control? And that's the part of being resilient. So this past 12 months has absolutely shown me almost a different side of myself, but it's been really, really healthy. So hopefully that's something we can delve into as well, because that's really the lessons that have been learned, and hopefully we can pass on during this session today.
Wonderful. Yes, we will. We're
Because
going to go there. We can go there next, or on the
yeah,
process, I guess, you go through.
because just to clarify, when I went on furlough last March, I was on furlough the entire year and was laid off permanently at the end of the year. So I had many months to really get my head around, what was going on, and really be resilient, but then come up with actual steps and actions to prepare myself to secure a opportunity that here I am now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Robin. And
Okay.
we're excited you're in Scottsdale. I'm excited to hopefully visit you at some point.
You.
Yes.
Yes.
Jennifer and I are
I've
coming.
already met some Oklahoma State grads out here too. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
We're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
We're
Exactly.
That's
everywhere.
right. That's right.
So, Jennifer, same question to you. Can you share a time with us that you've had to be resilient during your career?
Yeah, I have a similar story, but a little bit different flavor too. Kind of both. So the oil and gas company I spent that I worked for first, I spent 19 years there, and similar to what Robin said about types of situations where you have to show resiliency. The company had a management change, and I survived the management change. And some of the executive team didn't. And after the dust sort of settled, I had a new role. I was excited about my new role. I felt like it was a new challenge for me, and I felt like I was getting an opportunity, to do something new and show what I could do. Ultimately, that and I guess I'd speak to that management change was really hard. The CEO and founder of the company was a very dynamic individual, and one that had been a champion for the industry, had been a champion for me personally, and it was really, really hard to watch the board release him and go a different direction. So that was sort of the first gut check about, okay, how do I respond to this? Because I was pretty upset. And so again, I survived that process where they dialed back the executive team and had a new opportunity that I was pretty excited about. And that lasted about 6 to 9 months. And at that time, I was the only member of the executive management team. They'd actually created an executive committee that I thought would really be great for me. It was where I thought the significant decisions around strategy for the company would take place. I was the only woman on that committee. And ultimately, the new CEO that was brought in after a long external search, decided I wasn't the right person to remain on his team as well. And so, like all of the executives ahead of me, I was released. I mean, and I thought that company at that, previously for 19 years, I really thought I would retire at this company. I'd given so much of my life, so much time away from my family on, at my own election. But, I really thought that was where I was supposed to be. And ultimately it wasn't. It was decided for me, and it was really, really, really hard. And again, as Robin said, I mean, you really have to look deep and decide, how are you going to respond? Are you going to let that, be the devastation that you kind of wallow in, or not? And, and then this, again, in the pandemic, similar to Robin, this kind of the same thing happened again. The oil and gas industry saw a huge downturn right before the pandemic. Oil prices really, cratered. And I don't know if many people remember that happened before the pandemic, because a lot of people think it was a result of the low demand for energy. But there was a little bit of a price war going on between Russia and Saudi Arabia that caused oil prices to collapse in February of last year, right before the pandemic hit. So you had this sort of perfect storm where the pandemic hit, oil prices were low, energy companies were struggling with prices, struggling with demand, struggling with headcount that was too high. And again, I found myself in a situation where, as Robin said, sometimes even when you're at an executive level position, you are just a name on a spreadsheet. And when your pay is, something that the company's no longer willing to absorb, you find yourself on the outside. And the same thing happened to me again. So, those are my examples. There are lots of other times, as I mentioned before, when I've had to show resiliency in certain, specific situations, but, those are what I consider to be kind of the monumental ones.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing. And yes, for all of our viewers, Jennifer and I worked together. I was pretty new to the organization when a lot of that change started to occur. And there's, just a lot of emotions wrapped up anytime you have those types of changes. Absolutely. So if I may, I'd like to dig in a little bit just to the process, right? So you're both, you've reflected on these experiences of resiliency. Obviously have come out much stronger on the other side of it. But can you share with us a little bit about that process? So the word I want to go back to, Jennifer, that you shared, that constructive versus destructive, like what are the things that we need to be doing, I guess, in the moment as we're experiencing this adversity? How do we deal with it in a healthy way so that we can then move forward? Jennifer, I'd like to start with you if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think you have to, define, and Robin said this earlier, your response to the situation. And I think sometimes that takes reflection on your part as to what has happened to cause the stress or strain and cause the need to be resilient. Is it just a shift in your work duties? And in my case and Robin's case, it was a job loss. But all of those things come into play. And I think you have to, you have to look at your situation and adjust your perspective. And then figure out how you're going to respond. And Robin mentioned it earlier as well. And I said it in sort of a constructive or destructive way. You can mope, as Robin mentioned, you can pout and you can say, this is not fair. And, I'm just not going to participate. Or you participate, in the solution. And that can be, whether it's a work assignment that's difficult, or it's difficult coworkers, as Robin mentioned, or it is, a situation where you're not even associated with that employer and you're trying to figure out, how do I participate in the solution, which has now become my life. It's, my life's work. How am I going to put what's just happened to me in perspective and learn from it, Did I make, or were there mistakes I made along the way that I shouldn't make again? I think you have to just look deep and then decide, how you're going to respond. And I think that's, key in figuring out just, what comes next. But you have to just really be honest with yourself, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So Robin, anything that you'd add to that, just as around, the process and what's a constructive process in order to be resilient, a healthy process?
Well, I think a healthy process is it's okay to understand that you're going to initially feel stressed, insecure, you're uncertain about the future. Those are normal things, but you have to go through that phase, and hopefully you get through it quickly, because those are natural reactions to these type of situations. But I promised myself right from the start that I was going to be positive. And I actually ended up coming up with several P related words: positive, proactive, patient, and professional. Because in times of stress, it can be easy to be unprofessional. You can push, you can lash out, it's not fair. So you have to be professional, and then you have to be patient, but you ultimately always have to remain positive. And then you have to be proactive about your future. But before all that, I would say, and I go back to, change will be coming for you in your career. Be prepared. So the thing about it is, history says there will be a recession approximately every 8 to 10 years. So you can look that up. It's always for different reasons. The most recent reason is one that we never anticipated. You can oil pricing, crisis overseas, subprime mortgage. I mean, different reasons for recession. So if you get a job this year, be prepared for a recession at some point within the next 8 to 10 years. So be prepared, because you need to have some financial stability to allow yourself to be patient when the time comes, if you unfortunately lose your job. And then you have to understand what your strengths are. Step back. And again, don't feel sorry for yourself. Step back and use this as an opportunity to reflect on your career. Understand what you're good at. Understand what drives you. Understand what you enjoy. Understand who you like to be around. And then strive to be in the right place at the right time, surrounded by the right people. And if you can do those things, you gradually work your way through what is a crisis, a challenge, but the resiliency that you have allows you to work through it in a logical step-by-step manner. And of course, I prepared my resume, as all of you are doing, but the resume is just one thing that will help open a door for you, and it's a good representation of you. But I did my resume last June for the first time in almost 30 years. And it was a fantastic experience for me, not because it ultimately got me my job, but it really gave me a perspective on what have I achieved. So understand what you've achieved in your career, and then appreciate that. So that gives you a platform of positive reinforcement, and then that gives you something to build on. But continue to evolve your resume. The first one you come up with is not going to be your best, not by far. So I would say over the next 6 months after my resume was put together in June, I probably revised it 20 times. And I kept revising it, I kept refining it. And I kept talking to as many people as I could, people that I respect, people that are my friends, but the friends that will give me the honest truth. And don't go to your friends who are going to tell you what you want to hear. Go to your friends who are going to give you the real answers, so that you can prepare yourself for the next opportunity. So in the end, every time you talk to somebody, every time you revise your resume, every time you tweak your LinkedIn profile, you're really in your mind developing your story. so that when you get in the right place at the right time, surrounded by the right people, you tell your story in a very natural way. And you end up being able to secure the type of opportunity that you have dreamed of. And it really can turn out. And it can turn out to be a great, great thing. I look at the last 12 months as the biggest gift in my career, because like Jennifer, I thought that I would probably just keep going with my 4 seasons career. And once I lost that career, I realized there was a lot of aspects I didn't like about that. It just became what it was over many years. So stepping back, it allowed me to really reflect. And now I've gone down a path of, this is a job that I will absolutely enjoy. Sorry, I went on for a long time there.
No, I love it. And you're going to have to send us the P's so that we can share those with
I
our
can do that.
students. That's
Yes.
great.
Be
You know,
patient,
last P
positive,
was
proactive,
people.
and professional.
People. Yes.
His last P was people, and I think that's really important. I think that was a great a great synopsis and a great way to think about it with those P's. But yes, the people in your life that you can talk to, brainstorm, that you can network with, you know, that's critical.
And sorry to jump in and add on, but I want everyone to realize, because there are 19-year-old students potentially on this thread watching this. The person that ended up recommending me for this job that I'm now here in Scottsdale for was somebody I met when I was 19 years old as a freshman at Oklahoma State. And I impressed that person as a tennis player at Oklahoma State. And we followed, kept in touch. He followed my career. And ultimately, he was the person that recommended me, thinking this would be a perfect fit for me out here in Scottsdale. So you never know who you're impressing at this point in your life, because it may be somebody that can just open up a wonderful door for you at any point.
Absolutely. It's amazing. The world is much smaller than what we realize, right?
Yeah.
In
Really
a
is.
lot of ways. I want to go back to something that you said, Robin, as far as be prepared and almost plan for the uncertainty and the change. And, it's going to happen. I graduated during the last recession, worked in the oil and gas industry. And so maybe I'm a little pessimistic, but I remember when I started at the Easton Center, having conversations with the team saying, we need to be prepared for when a recession hits, because 2018, 2019, it was very easy for our students to find opportunities. And, and then quickly, obviously, present day. So it does happen quite a bit, and just being prepared for it probably helps us deal with it a little bit more. I want to transition to a question that we haven't actually, someone submitted as well. Do you feel like, is resiliency like the nature versus nurture? Are we born with it? Can we develop it? Is it something that we can develop over time? Jennifer, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, no, I think you probably aren't born with it. I mean, I bet there's something innate, and obviously you survive when you're very young, and probably have some challenges that you wouldn't expect. But I really do think that you can learn to be resilient. I think it's intentional. You have to have intentional behavior. And I think the way Robin summarized it with his P's are really exactly, that's a great path to step through in being intentional about being resilient. I mean, I think it's very easy to fall into feeling sorry for yourself. And I think resiliency has to be intentional. And you have to think about all of those things to, really remain positive, as Robin was saying, and respond properly. Because, everything you do, and, one of the P's Robin said as well was being professional. How you respond in a difficult time really can impact what happens next. And so I think if you can practice those P's that Robin said intentionally, practice them in everything you do, be professional, be positive. And so that when the time comes that you really have to shine in the midst of adversity, then you kind of know you have a well to draw from. But I don't think that I don't think you can just be resilient without being intentional about it, I guess.
Okay, great. I like that word, intentionality behind it. Robin, anything that you'd add to that?
I would say yes. Resiliency comes from experiences. Resiliency is a result of life experiences. We've all experienced individuals who unfortunately are still complaining about something that happened to them 20 years ago, whether it was a situation that occurred to them or their upbringing or their circumstances. And we as human beings can be empathetic towards that, but there's a certain point where that person has not shown resiliency and has not learned from that experience. So for me, resiliency comes from experience, specifically life experiences. So everything that happens to you, good, bad, indifferent, take something from it. But in particular, the tough times, learn something about yourself and use it as a positive, make something out of it and carry that with you. That's what creates resiliency.
Absolutely. Talking about, you gave the example, just talking about positive attitude. And then, also, we all know that person that's still complaining about that thing that happened, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about just attitude. And whenever you have maybe a, positive attitude on something versus a negative attitude and how that impacts our resiliency. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk about maybe when a setback actually turned into something that was better than what would have happened if that setback had not occurred. So Robin, specifically, with your recent transition or other things that occurred. So are there times where we have these setbacks? We don't know it in the moment because we're sad and we're frustrated, but it actually turns out to be better.
Yeah, I think that when something bad happens to you, you have to try it. So much of it is a shift. It's a mind shift. You can go down one path, and trust me, I've gone down the negative path. I mean, we all do. We all have negative reactions to situations, but you have to re-steer. You have to change the direction and go into the attitude of, this is an opportunity. Every time you face a challenge, it's an opportunity to handle it differently, handle it better, learn something from it, and do that with every phase of your life. It can be something seemingly simple. It can be you're in your car and somebody does something. Okay, you can get upset, but it's an opportunity just to back off, be patient, be calm, and respond in a positive way. And when you do that in the small phases of your life, day-to-day stuff, you start to handle the bigger stuff in a more positive, calm way, and you shift in the direction that is positive rather than taking a negative reaction.
Great. Yeah, those are all great tips, and that professionalism is so key, right? You want to stay calm, you want to stay professional. That's something that if we don't stay professional, not only is it not going to help the current situation, but it could negatively impact future career situations as well.
Certainly.
So, Jennifer, I'd love to hear from you and hear about what are you doing now? Because you're doing you're now with the state. You're not in the oil and gas industry. So I don't want to put words in your mouth and say if this turned out better than before. So I just like to hear a little bit from you as far as a time that a setback turned out to be more beneficial than maybe what you thought initially.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you two very specific examples. So when I talked about the 19 years I spent with the oil and gas company before, and ultimately I was not part of that solution. When I was let go, it was devastating. I mean, I really had to get over myself. I questioned my abilities, my ability to get another job. I questioned, a lot of things. And two things were really critical that happened to me after that, that were ultimately life-changing. One is that founder CEO that left, that I had to, work through his departure, was the first person that called me after and wanted to meet immediately and talk about how I could help him in the new company he had started and all of that. That was huge to me. And it goes back again, and I'm sorry, I sound like a broken record, to Robbins Pease, which I love the way he put it. I mean, if I didn't have that relationship with that person, I could have wallowed around a long time, and probably would have, until sorry. Who has landlines anymore? But I had to just say, okay, I can do this again. I can work again. I've done this before, and I just needed that person. I needed that person in my life to remind me. But also another thing that happened in that time was my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so it was probably 2 weeks after my departure, he was diagnosed, and we immediately moved him. My parents were not married, so he was just by himself, and I'm an only child. So it was just he and I to figure this out. And he received a really bad diagnosis. And so we immediately sold his house, got him in the senior living center, and we headed to Houston to the MD Anderson Cancer Center and tried to seek treatment for a really very rare kind of cancer. If I had still been working the job that I had been working before, I would have really fought with myself over the time I would have allowed to take care of my dad. And that sounds so horrible, but it's the mindset I had. I had always put that career first, that when my dad needed me the most, I would have struggled with that. I would have relied on my husband probably to do some things. I would have, I would have, I don't know, I wouldn't have given my whole self. And I was that, that departure from that role, I think was, I think it was truly a God thing for me. I think that I was able, in my dad's worst, time, and his cancer was terminal, and ultimately he passed, but I was able to give my whole self to him in that situation and make decisions solely for his benefit without being, distracted by a job that I was, that I wasn't paying attention to, or emails that I wasn't, returning, or, projects that I wasn't getting done. And so that is an example, one example in a situation where things turned out better, in that in my dad's deepest, darkest time, I was able to be there. And I don't think I would have let myself do that otherwise. So I do think, things do happen for a reason, as you hear. And then again, you're right. This last role, in May of last year, so after 2, months of, being home in the pandemic, and I was part of, obviously, the senior executive team there. We were having, we were daily talking not only about how to run the business in a horrible commodity price environment and downturn in the industry, but we were also making decisions about people's safety and, coming back to the office and when that could possibly be, and, how, what we should be expecting from them at home when they're dealing with kids at home. And, there was so much uncertainty. And so there was a lot, going on at that time that was way beyond, just my management role. So when I lost that role, I had the opportunity to say, kind of reflect and say, okay, what do I want to do from here? And I decided that I didn't want to take another management role. I did have some early calls about, people saying, hey, I hear this is, this opportunity is opening. Would you be interested in? And I just had to kind of look at myself and say, okay, I've kind of been given this gift. It's not a gift that I thought I wanted at the time, certainly, and nor one that I would have taken on my own. But I had to say, okay, this is the situation I'm in. I can see it, I can take it and look at it as a gift and as an opportunity to really reassess, okay, now what do I want to do? And so I decided that I was going to call this, and you've heard me say it, Abby, and I tell anybody that asks me, what are you doing now? I said, I have transitioned to the advisory part of my career. So I had the management side of my career, and now I've moved on to advisory work. And so I serve on a public bank board. I have served on a few boards in the community. But then the opportunity arose for me to to work in an advisory capacity for the state of Oklahoma. I'm a native Oklahoman. I've lived and worked here all my life, and I never dreamed about a job in state government. I'm certainly not a political type. So, something like that would have never come to mind. But the opportunity presented itself for me to use the expertise from my many years of management to really act in an advisory capacity. And so today, my role on the governor's cabinet as Secretary of Economic Administration for the state of Oklahoma allows me to provide advisory advisory services, to lend my experience, my business acumen to 23 agencies in the state of Oklahoma that have, they have full management teams, but they have never had my expertise. And so that is, that's the way I look at this last career change. I wouldn't have made it on my own, but I think for me, it was time for me to step away from management and use the almost 30-year career that I had developed in the accounting industry and then oil and gas to use it in a different way. And so I am really excited. I'm excited about the things that are happening in the state of Oklahoma. That's a whole different story and a different session. But it's a great example in my life about where something that was really difficult to swallow at first really has turned out so much better for me and has given me the opportunity to do something that I really never thought I would have the opportunity to do.
Well, and what a wonderful way, to give back, like you talked about, and we all talk about disconnect between the corporate and state and government. What an opportunity to be able to get involved, with state government, be able to lend that expertise and that knowledge and help those agencies. So we're certainly excited to have you in that role. And it makes me think about, your story, something that Kelly Ebert, our manager here in the Easton Center, she manages our career coaches. She says this a lot to our students around trust the process. I know this may not make sense right now, but just trust the process. And it sounds like, especially with the story with your dad, and everything that's going on, sometimes we just have to trust the process, accept that this situation right now, it stinks. It's not what we want, but in the end, we're going to come out better on the other side. So thank you so much for sharing that story, Jennifer.
Sure.
We're getting close to the end of our time, but I have, just one last question to get your thoughts and have you reflect on. And students, if you have any questions that you want to submit, we can ask those before we wrap up today. But, there's a lot of uncertainty in the job market, the economy right now. We hear some good news someday, and then we hear some bad news the next day, and we're just not really sure. And so our students, they do worry. We have seniors that are graduating now. We have those looking for internships. If you were to put yourself in their shoes right now, what advice would you have for them? Obviously practicing the P's. But Robin, I'll start with you. What are some things that they can be doing right now as they're getting ready to enter into the job market? What can they be doing to practice resiliency?
Well, trust yourself, understand your skills, understand the value that you bring to the table, and really believe in that. You are valuable. Everyone brings something to an organization. So believe that you have value to bring. Understand your story, understand your strengths, understand how you can positively impact an organization. But don't go towards an organization that doesn't appear to be a good fit. So understand your likes, understand your skill set and where it fits, because that's where you will be the most successful. I think we all have human beings are sort of insecure by nature, and when we get up against a barrier, we tend to think that there's something wrong with me and I need to figure out a way over or around this barrier. Well, perhaps that's the wrong path. You have to be surrounded by the right people, the right place, the right time. And so if something doesn't feel right, then move on to the next opportunity. Don't spend too much energy trying to fight to be part of something that really may not be the right thing for you. So that's one avenue that I would take. But again, you have to remain positive, but also see this as a fantastic opportunity. You know, Abby mentioned this, that she, as she was coming into the work world, she experienced a recession. If you learn from this experience that you're going through now and the last 12 months, you are going to be so much better prepared for the real world, because you will prepare yourself for when this happens again. It'll be a different situation, but there will be another recession. So again, prepare yourself for that. So prepare yourself for an immediate opportunity, hopefully in the near future, but keep in mind how this felt and what you learned from this. You're learning to be resilient right now. Just like my children are learning to be resilient right now. We all are. But how you come out of it, you this is the competitive part. Come out of it better than those around you, and be more resilient, and be more have learned more lessons from it, and be better prepared for your career opportunity, but be better prepared for when this happens again.
Great. Thank you so much, Robin. Great feedback. Jennifer, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I would just add, keep an open mind. I think certainly I've been victim to that of trying to script a result. And I think, and certainly in my role today, I couldn't have scripted this. And so if I had really tried, I would have missed this. So I think you have to keep your mind open to opportunities that you might not have seen coming. And so, they may not be, it may not be permanent, but it may be a great stepping stone to, where you ultimately want to arrive. But, as Robin said, there are a lot of ways to get to one place, and over and around, underneath, and obviously a whole different path can be possible. And so I think, that what I've learned certainly with this last career change is, don't close your mind to things that just seem hard, you've never done before, that you just can't picture and imagine, because those might present the most valuable opportunities. And if you don't, if you aren't open to those opportunities, you just don't know where something like that might lead.
Absolutely.
And Abby, if I could add too, I would caution everyone to, the measurements of success in careers sometimes get skewed. And I'm speaking from personal experience. This time last year, I was overseeing an operation with 5 different departments and a staff of 100. Okay, that's not massive in the real world, but it made me think initially that, well, my next step needs to be a bigger organization, a bigger role. And in fact, I have gone almost full circle to, I am in a very simple operation that gives me the opportunity to really follow my passion and do the things that are a great fit for me as a human being, and it will provide better work-life balance. So I just bring that up as, just don't always think that more responsibility, larger budget to manage, more money, those type of things that are easy to go down that path because it seems like the norm. Just really make conscious decisions as to what's right for you, and things will work out, and you will end up in a great career that meets your financial needs, because we all have that, but it also fulfills you.
That being fulfilled, that meaningful work, that's so important. And that's great feedback. And one of the things, Jennifer, I want to go back to something you said about having an open mind. That's one thing we've really been telling students. What story do you want to tell a recruiter a year from now or 2 years from now? Do you want to say, well, there weren't any jobs, and so I just didn't get a job? Or did you get a job bagging groceries and help a nonprofit organization that you're very passionate about? So we talk a lot about the story you want to tell. And I'll go back to one of our favorite people, a quote that I heard Joe Easton say earlier, I think it was in 2020, around just start somewhere. Like just start somewhere, get that experience through, I think, all of the P's, through being professional and positive and, building relationships with the right people. Your career is going to grow in the areas that it needs to. But Robin, I think what you talked about, just highlighting, don't just think that more is what you need.
No,
Realize
it's not.
What you need as a human being is so important. So
Yeah.
important. Wonderful. Any closing thoughts or comments that you have before we close our workshop today?
I can honestly say that this past year has been a gift for me in my life, at a time that it could have on the surface appeared disastrous. So, just having the opportunity to say, what is the universe trying to tell you when something like this occurs, and it can really turn out to be a great thing. And like Jennifer, unfortunately with her father, but it turned out to be a real positive for her. It was a wonderful opportunity for her, and that would never have come around. And for different reasons for me too, it turned out to be a wonderful gift. So anytime you face adversity, look at it as an opportunity. You never know where it'll take you.
Wonderful.
That's so good. And I just think, don't ever lose your self-confidence. When, as Robin has said, when life kind of smacks you around, or your situation kind of smacks you around, keep believing in yourself and what you're able to accomplish and what you can control. Focus on what you can control. No one could have predicted the year we just went through, and we certainly couldn't control it, but you can control your response. And so when you focus on, when you maintain your self-confidence and you focus on what you can control, I just think you're better equipped to handle any situation that comes along.
And if I might add, one thing we maybe really haven't touched on is, the environment that you surround yourself in or with. Be around people that support you and encourage you and help you. Don't be around friends that drag you down. Don't be around others that drag you down. You're not going to progress in life that way. You will become one of those people that feel sorry for themselves because you haven't accomplished, and you'll be surrounded by those same people complaining about life. So be around the right people. They will be there for you in times of crisis, and they will help you through it. And we all have experienced that in the last 12 months, and it's helped us get to this point where we feel like we look back and it really was the best thing that happened to us.
Absolutely. And the Easton Center Advisory Board has been the perfect example of that for both Robin and me. I mean, it's a great group of supportive people, all very successful. And here we were raising our hands and said, well, things have changed a little for us.
Yes.
And they were the first people to respond and say, hey, we're your biggest fans. We know you have this. And so I can't reiterate how true those words are, Robin.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, we are grateful for you. The Easton Center is grateful for your support. We so appreciate you sharing your stories with us. I feel like when it comes to resiliency, not everyone's, comfortable with sharing, but we need to talk about these things. It's how we grow and learn together. And so we so appreciate you and being with us today.
You're so welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. We enjoyed it.
Great. Well, this is our last Business Brews for this semester. So we just kicked off this series last month. We were talking with Justin Stead, also from the Easton Center Advisory Board. This is our last one for this semester, but we will be picking these back up in September. We plan to do them in person. Yay. And so more to come on that. And again, Jennifer, Robin, thank you so much. Can we just end with a Go Pokes?
Go Pokes!
Go Pokes!
All right. Thank you all.